The 25th of August 1482, the death of Margaret of Anjou, Queen Consort of England. Margaret of Anjou, born in 1430, was one of the most formidable and controversial figures in 15th century European history. Her marriage to Henry VI of England placed her at the center of the Wars of the Roses, a series of dynastic conflicts that shaped the future of England. Margaret's life was marked by relentless political maneuvering, personal tragedy, and an unwavering commitment to her son's claim to the English throne. Her death in 1482 marked the end of an era, closing a tumultuous chapter in the history of the English monarchy. Let's explore Margaret's life, her role in the Wars of the Roses, her exile and final years, and the legacy she left behind. Early life and background. Margaret of Anjou was born on March 23, 1430, in the Duchy of Lorraine, part of the Holy Roman Empire. She was the second daughter of René, Duke of Anjou, and Isabella, Duchess of Lorraine. Her family was part of the Valois-Anjou line, a cadet branch of the French royal family. Though of royal blood, the Anjou family was not particularly wealthy, and Margaret's early life was spent in the politically charged atmosphere of the French court, where she was educated in the arts of diplomacy and statecraft. The political landscape of 15th century Europe was shaped by the Hundred Years' War between England and France. Margaret's marriage to Henry VI in 1445 was arranged as part of the Treaty of Tours, an attempt to secure a truce between the two warring nations. The marriage was controversial in England, where it was viewed as a political concession to France, particularly due to the ceding of Maine to the French crown. Despite the unpopularity of the marriage, Margaret quickly established herself as a powerful figure at the English court, taking on an increasingly active role in governance as her husband's mental health deteriorated. Marriage to Henry VI and ascension to power. Margaret's marriage to Henry VI placed her at the center of English politics at a time of growing unrest. Henry VI was a pious and well-meaning king, but his reign was marked by military defeats in France and economic difficulties at home. His bouts of mental illness, which rendered him incapable of ruling for extended periods, further destabilized the kingdom. In this context, Margaret's assertiveness and political acumen became essential to the functioning of the monarchy. Margaret quickly aligned herself with the Lancastrian faction, which supported her husband's claim to the throne against the Yorkist faction led by Richard, Duke of York. Her involvement in political matters was unusual for a queen consort and provoked considerable resentment among the English nobility. Despite this, Margaret took on the role of protector of her husband's interests, working to secure his reign and, later, the inheritance of their son, Edward of Westminster. The birth of Edward of Westminster and the political crisis. In 1453, Margaret gave birth to her only son, Edward of Westminster. The birth of an heir was expected to stabilize the Lancastrian cause, but it coincided with one of Henry VI's most severe episodes of mental illness, which left him in a catatonic state for over a year. During this period, Richard, Duke of York, was appointed protector of the realm, effectively sidelining Margaret and her supporters. Margaret viewed York's appointment as a direct threat to her son's inheritance. Determined to secure Edward's future, she began to rally support among the nobility, seeking alliances with those loyal to the Lancastrian cause. Her efforts to protect her son's inheritance led her to take an increasingly active role in the political and military struggles that would soon engulf the kingdom. The outbreak of the Wars of the Roses. The Wars of the Roses erupted in 1455, pitting the Lancastrian and Yorkist factions against each other in a brutal struggle for control of the English throne. The conflict was named after the emblems of the rival factions, the Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York. The first battle of the war, the First Battle of St. Albans, was a decisive Yorkist victory that saw Henry VI captured and the Lancastrians driven from power. In the aftermath of St. Albans, Margaret emerged as the leader of the Lancastrian resistance. She orchestrated a series of military campaigns aimed at reclaiming control of the kingdom, culminating in the Lancastrian victory at the Second Battle of St. Albans in 1461. This victory allowed Margaret to briefly regain control of her husband and the government, but the triumph was short-lived. The Lancastrians were decisively defeated at the Battle of Towton later that year, and Henry VI was deposed by Edward IV, a Yorkist claimant to the throne. Margaret and her son fled to Scotland, where they sought refuge and continued to plot against the Yorkists. Despite the defeat at Towton, Margaret refused to give up. She continued to fight for her son's inheritance, securing alliances with foreign powers and organizing military campaigns from exile. Exile and the brief restoration. Margaret's years in exile were marked by relentless efforts to restore her husband to the throne. She traveled extensively across Europe, seeking support from foreign rulers, including the French king, Louis XI, and the Duke of Burgundy. Her persistence paid off in 1470 when she secured an alliance with Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, known as the Kingmaker. Disillusioned with Edward IV's rule, Warwick switched his allegiance to the Lancastrians, and with his support, Margaret launched a campaign to restore Henry VI to the throne. The Lancastrian restoration was brief. Henry VI was restored to the throne in October 1470, but Edward IV quickly regrouped and launched a counter-offensive. The Yorkists defeated the Lancastrians at the Battle of Barnet in April 1471, where Warwick was killed. The final blow came at the Battle of Tewkesbury in May 1471, where Margaret's son, Edward of Westminster, was killed in combat. With Edward's death, the Lancastrian cause was effectively crushed. Henry VI was captured by the Yorkists and murdered in the Tower of London shortly afterward, likely on Edward IV's orders. Margaret was captured and brought to London as a prisoner. Her hopes, ambitions, and efforts to secure her family's legacy had all come to naught. Captivity and ransom. Following her capture, Margaret was held in various locations in England, including Wallingford Castle and the Tower of London. Her life in captivity was marked by despair and isolation. The once powerful queen was reduced to a figure of pity, kept under close watch with little freedom to communicate with the outside world. Her health deteriorated, and she was largely forgotten by the English court, which was focused on consolidating Yorkist power. In 1475, after several years in captivity, Margaret was ransomed by her cousin, Louis XI of France. She was allowed to return to her homeland, but she did so as a broken woman, devoid of power and influence. The ransom was a significant financial burden for the French crown, and Margaret's return to France was not the triumphant homecoming she might have once imagined. In France, Margaret lived in relative obscurity. She resided in a small household supported by a modest pension from the French crown, far removed from the wealth and power she had once wielded as Queen of England. Her final years were spent in quiet retirement, with little involvement in the political affairs of either England or France. Death and burial. Margaret of Anjou died on August 25, 1482, at the age of 52. Her death was a quiet affair, far removed from the tumultuous events that had characterized her life. She was buried in Angers Cathedral in her native Anjou, far from the English court where she had once been a powerful and controversial figure. Margaret's death did not generate much attention in England, where the political landscape had shifted significantly since her downfall. By the time of her death, the Wars of the Roses had continued to rage, and the Yorkist hold on the throne was being increasingly challenged by the rising Tudor faction. As a result, Margaret's passing was largely overlooked, as England remained focused on the ongoing struggle for power. In France, Margaret's death was acknowledged with a certain degree of respect, though she was no longer the powerful queen who had once played a significant role in European politics. Her burial in Angers Cathedral was a modest affair, and there were no grand memorials erected in her honor. This subdued end to her life stands in stark contrast to the fierce and determined figure she had been during her years as queen consort. Legacy. Margaret of Anjou's legacy is complex and multifaceted. Historians have debated her role in the Wars of the Roses, her influence over Henry VI, and the extent to which her actions contributed to the prolonged conflict that devastated England. She has been portrayed as a ruthless and ambitious woman, a tragic figure caught in the web of dynastic politics, and a mother driven by a fierce determination to protect her son's inheritance. One of the most enduring aspects of Margaret's legacy is her role as a female leader in a male-dominated society. During a time when women were expected to remain in the background, Margaret broke with convention by taking an active role in political and military affairs. Her leadership of the Lancastrian faction during the Wars of the Roses was unprecedented, and she demonstrated considerable political acumen and strategic thinking. However, her assertiveness also made her a target of criticism and hostility, particularly from those who viewed her as overstepping the traditional boundaries of female power. Margaret's actions during the Wars of the Roses had a lasting impact on the course of English history. Her determination to secure the throne for her son, Edward of Westminster, prolonged the conflict and contributed to the instability of the English monarchy. While her efforts ultimately failed, they set the stage for the eventual rise of the Tudor dynasty, which would bring an end to the Wars of the Roses and usher in a new era of English history. In literature and popular culture, Margaret of Anjou has been depicted in various ways, often emphasizing her role as a strong and determined woman. William Shakespeare's portrayal of Margaret in his history plays, particularly in the Henry VI trilogy and Richard III, presents her as a formidable and vengeful figure, driven by her desire for power and revenge. While Shakespeare's depiction is undoubtedly dramatized, it has contributed to the enduring image of Margaret as a powerful and complex character. Re-evaluation of Margaret's role. In recent years, historians have re-evaluated Margaret of Anjou's role in the Wars of the Roses, offering a more nuanced understanding of her character and actions. Modern scholarship has recognized the challenges Margaret faced as a woman in a position of power in a male-dominated society. Far from being a mere power seeker, Margaret was motivated by a deep sense of duty to protect her husband's throne and secure her son's inheritance. Her actions, though sometimes ruthless, were driven by the harsh realities of the political landscape she navigated. Margaret's role in the military campaigns of the Wars of the Roses has also been reconsidered. While she was not a military leader in the traditional sense, she played a crucial role in planning and organizing the Lancastrian war effort. Her ability to secure foreign alliances and marshal resources for her cause demonstrated her adaptability and resourcefulness as a leader. Her role as a mother has also been highlighted in recent re-evaluations. Much of Margaret's determination and resolve stemmed from her desire to protect her son, Edward of Westminster, and ensure the continuation of the Lancastrian line. This maternal instinct was a powerful motivator and shaped many of her decisions during the Wars of the Roses. In this light, Margaret can be seen as a tragic figure, whose determination to safeguard her family ultimately led to her downfall. Margaret's place in the Wars of the Roses. The Wars of the Roses were a complex and multifaceted conflict, and Margaret of Anjou was just one of many figures who played a role in its unfolding. However, her involvement was significant, and her actions had a profound impact on the course of the war. As the leader of the Lancastrian faction, Margaret was instrumental in shaping the direction of the conflict. Her efforts to secure foreign alliances, her strategic planning of military campaigns, and her relentless pursuit of power on behalf of her son were all key factors in the protracted nature of the war. While the Yorkists ultimately emerged victorious, Margaret's actions ensured that the Lancastrian cause remained a potent force for much of the conflict. Margaret's place in the Wars of the Roses is also significant because of the way she challenged traditional gender roles. In a time when women were expected to be passive and submissive, Margaret took on a leadership role that was both unusual and controversial. Her involvement in the war demonstrated that women could be powerful political players, even in a society that sought to limit their influence. However, Margaret's place in the Wars of the Roses is also marked by tragedy. The death of her son at the Battle of Tewkesbury, followed by the murder of her husband in the Tower of London, marked the end of the Lancastrian cause. Margaret was left with nothing, her ambitions crushed, and her legacy overshadowed by the eventual rise of the Tudor dynasty. Her story is a reminder of the human cost of political conflict and the often devastating consequences of power struggles. Conclusion. Margaret of Anjou's life and death provide a fascinating insight into the tumultuous period of the Wars of the Roses and the challenges faced by women in positions of power during the medieval era. As Queen Consort of England, Margaret was a central figure in one of the most significant dynastic conflicts in English history. Her determination to protect her family's legacy, her involvement in military and political affairs, and her tragic downfall have left an indelible mark on the historical record. Margaret's death in 1482 marked the end of a life that was defined by conflict, ambition, and tragedy. While her efforts to secure the throne for her son ultimately failed, her impact on English history cannot be denied. Margaret of Anjou remains a powerful symbol of resilience and determination in the face of overwhelming odds, and her story continues to be a subject of fascination for historians and the general public alike. In the end, Margaret's legacy is a testament to the complexities of medieval politics and the challenges faced by women who sought to wield power in a male-dominated world. Her life serves as a reminder that history is often shaped by those who dare to challenge the status quo, even at great personal cost. Margaret of Anjou's story is one of both triumph and tragedy, and her place in history is secure as one of the most significant figures of her time. Thanks for listening. Like and comment. And please subscribe, as that will help us get more videos out to those interested in the Middle Ages. See you next time on Medieval Chronicles 1066. Stay curious.